So now what we're going to do is move into a brief panel discussion. So let's dive into some of those questions we've received for our panellists. So the one I have here is for Rod. How does the Commission plan to use existing and new research findings to develop and enforce policies that effectively reduce and eliminate restrictive practices across different service settings? So what are the steps to ensuring that this research informs practical regulatory actions? Rod, over to you.
Thanks, Jane. That's a big question as well, but thank you. Look, I think the Commission is very committed to engaging in research activity and looking at the evidence that stems from research. And we all know that research into practice sometimes takes longer than it should, and our commitment is to try and drive research into practice as quickly as we can. The areas that we're focusing on, I guess key to this question is that we're looking at areas of positive behaviour support and what can we do in terms of the skills and expertise of positive behaviour support practitioners. So we have a positive behaviour support capability framework which sets out the criteria for practitioners who are in the market and provide those supports to people. We're undertaking a review of that plan through currently being led by Flinders University, but also in partnership with Monash and Melbourne and Queensland universities to look at the skill sets of positive behaviour support practitioners and looking how we can strengthen that area of the market. We're also looking at what can we do in terms of human rights and how can we leverage off the CRPD to strengthen national consistency and how we oversight restrictive practices and our combined efforts through state and territories to reduce and eliminate restrictive practices. So we're just embarking on a piece of work at the moment that will do a bit of a deep dive to see what further emphasis we can put on the CRPD as the instrument that drives our efforts to reduce restrictive practices. And as I mentioned, the workforce capability, we're currently working with La Trobe University on the development of some e-learning practices on the implementation of behaviour support and increasing autonomy and quality of life for people who are subject to restrictive practices. So they're currently working on what will be 11 modules for disability support workers who will be able to access that free from the middle of next year. So they're, I guess, some of the things that we're focusing on to try and shift the research into and evidence into practice. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. It sounds like there's a lot of wide-ranging activities going on at the Commission there. Thank you for sharing some of the detail about that. So I guess the next question I have came in for Catherine McAlpine. And I know you've spoken to this a little bit already, but we would love you to sort of share a little bit more about what kinds of research or evidence are most urgently needed to understand and address the impact of restrictive practices on people with intellectual disabilities? So how can we ensure this research leads to rights-based, practical alternatives? Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Jane. The sorts of research, we need research done directly with people with intellectual disability, directly done with people that live in the settings, in group homes, who have experienced restrictive practices. We also need what I was referring to as like cross-sector research, because we have restrictive practices normalised in education and aged care and other settings and in health, where we really need to unpick that. There's a really big role that education plays. Like we look at the histories of people with really complex support needs, often who are both autistic and have an intellectual disability, and how they experience violence and abuse while they're growing up. So by the time they're a young adult, they've already got a psychosocial disability, they've already got an experience of trauma, and we're already in a situation where we're having to deal with really complex behaviour support needs. What we want to see is, how do we get to rights-based practical alternatives, is seeing that what of the investments we can do in supports earlier on. What does supported decision-making look like for people much younger? What does belonging in the community, you know, this feeling of alienation from the community that young people feel, remembering that behaviour is a form of communication. And so for people who are exhibiting, you know, that might use violence or use other behaviours, it's because usually these other terrible things have happened. And so we really need to understand those drivers and also do research into some of the amazing work, for instance, that we see in the Services for One, where families of people with really high support needs have actually come up with some innovative solutions, but we haven't done any research to sort of underpin it to go, all we have at the moment is anecdata, but how do we put that together into proper research, into good practice? And the last thing I would say is learning from what we're doing in the National Disability Data Asset, where we have a separate ethics approach, which is not just about the ethics that happens at universities and other places. Often that's sort of problematic in the way it looks at vulnerability. So there's a whole sort of thing to unpick there in terms of the way that people with an intellectual disability can participate as co-researchers, but also into the do no harm and will this really make a difference? There are too many projects that get up that actually won't make things better for people with disability. And so by having an ethics approach made up of people with disability, including intellectual disability family members, that you actually say, will this project actually do the, you know, make things better? And so that way we get the right research funded. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I guess, you know, reflecting on a few of the things back there that you really said are important around having those supports quite early, making sure that there's research understanding the drivers of, you know, some of the experiences that people are having, and that it's going right to the source, that people with intellectual disabilities are involved in that research and giving their experiences as well. But that overall, you know, there's an ethics approach that the National Disability Data Asset, you know, it's sort of you know, using that could be good modelling for some of the ethics around the research. The final question that we do have is for Siobhan, and that is, how does the department plan to work with researchers and the disability community to ensure policies aimed at eliminating restrictive practices are informed by lived experience and the latest evidence? So what are the processes or partnerships you would recommend to make this collaboration effective? Siobhan.
What a question. Thanks, Jane. Personally, having had the privilege of working in a number of universities with researchers and now working with the disability community to make sure that we have evidence-based policy, I'm deeply committed to making sure that that is how we shape reform, particularly in relation to restrictive practices. And I know that the government views that people with disability and the disability community need to be centre to all reform. And we also know that embedding an evidence base into policy reform means that we're creating sustainable change. And that is why we fully supported the establishment of the NDRP. And I'm really proud to be part of this event today. We trust that the NDRP will facilitate collaborative and inclusive disability-led research through its research agenda. Important events like this one, Evidence into Action, and it's brought together so much of the community and researchers, service providers and policymakers. And I will say that they haven't chosen an easy first topic, but it is absolutely setting the tone for what we need to do here together. And also, collaboration with everyone present today ensures we have consistent and effective approaches to reducing and eliminating restrictive practices. And I would really encourage everyone who has joined today's event to continue to engage with reform underway as we continue to partner with researchers to make sustainable change. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you very much, Siobhan, and thank you to all of the panelists really for all of your valuable insights and perspectives today. We really do appreciate hearing from all of you. And Siobhan, I do agree, I'm quite proud to also be a part of this evidence to action event today, and hopefully there'll be more of it in the future. So I want to thank everyone also in the audience for your questions and engagement. We know there's so much more to be discussed, and your contributions are really crucial in driving this work forward.